How close were Notre Dame and Stanford to joining the Big Ten?
Conference expansion is always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain with a discussion about the Big Ten and the ACC.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Mountain. I'm JY. This is my good friend Steve, and we have a discussion about expansion involving Notre Dame and Stanford to the Big Ten. Steve, I know you've been doing some digging on this here recently. What did you find here regarding these two schools?
So first of all, I want to put a couple disclaimers here.
Okay,
today.
disclaimers first.
One, none of this is like new breaking news. So I want to, like, this isn't us saying, hey, Notre Dame and Stanford are coming to the Big Ten. It's just more of a little bit of discussion based on some stuff that I was able to dig up.
Okay.
And the reason I got on this whole thing was our good friend of the show, Immaculate.
Okay.
Who you've got to be following on Twitter,
sure,
on X, if you're interested in college football and all the stuff that goes beyond, on behind the scenes. He kind of tickled my brain, was asking me some questions, and asked me to just kind of go and do a little digging, see what I could find out from my contacts in the Big Ten. So that kind of snowballed, his original question, which I'm not going to put out there because maybe he wants to put that out there on X. But he got me thinking, he got me following up and asking questions. And basically what came out of it was, talking to my Big Ten contacts, I got a little bit more information and context about some stuff that was going on about a year ago, maybe 16, 17 months ago, when Notre Dame was negotiating with NBC to get their rights renewed.
Right.
Now, I've said on here before that I had heard that when they couldn't get it, seemed like NBC might not give them the deal that they wanted.
Right.
That the Big Ten took another shot at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. So I knew that, but I got some more context with this. And so what I've learned is during that time frame, when the Big Ten reached out to Notre Dame, it was actually closer to happening than maybe we thought at the time.
Wow.
And what I was told that it was if NBC did not renew that deal, it was a done deal, guaranteed that Notre Dame would be coming to the Big Ten. Now, Notre Dame had one stipulation, which I thought was interesting. Well, it's, I guess, a two-part stipulation. They wanted Stanford to come with them, be a package deal. And that's always been kind of a bone of contention with the Big Ten. They didn't invite Stanford on their own. Yeah. But basically what the Big Ten said is, you bring whoever you want. If you want Stanford, you bring Stanford.
Sure.
So Notre Dame, if they didn't get that deal with NBC, they wanted to come, bring Stanford, and be guaranteed that they would be able to continue to play USC every year and play Stanford every year.
Okay.
And that was basically a backup deal that was verbally, unofficially agreed upon. Again, if they did not get that deal with NBC. Now, obviously, we all know NBC renewed the deal, but it just kind of got me and one of my contacts talking about the what ifs. What would have happened, how close it was, and apparently it was very, very close. And beyond that, what my contact told me was when that fell through, when NBC signed the deal with Notre Dame, that was a change in the pathway, obviously.
Sure.
And what this contact says is basically Notre Dame continues to be very, very happy in the ACC or affiliated with the ACC.
Yep.
And Stanford this was kind of confirmation, Stanford is tied at the hip to Notre Dame. We've always wondered, okay, if Notre Dame came, who would be the tag along? Who would be the extra? Well, this confirmed for me that is Stanford. And honestly, it's from the information I got, is Stanford is actually really happy and really content being in the ACC.
Okay.
There was a lot of, Pac fans that were like, how long are they going to like to travel? Stanford has more money than Oprah. They don't mind traveling. Their teams always traveled across the country.
Right.
They view themselves kind of like Notre Dame as a national program. It just happens to be stationed on the West Coast.
Yep.
So they are very happy. Notre Dame is incredibly happy out there. And this is something we've talked about before. Notre Dame looks at the ACC as their kind of personal pet conference.
Sure.
They get everything they want. They can continue to be independent in football while still playing some ACC teams.
Right.
But they get to associate themselves with other schools that are high academics and high athletics. Now, there's a question about some of the ACC teams, how good they are in athletics, especially football. But they basically get exactly they want, a conference that they almost kind of tailor-made or tailor-created.
Okay.
And from what I'm understanding, a lot of the teams that originally, not a Clemson or FSU, but a lot of those other teams are actually, kind of content with being in the ACC as long as they keep Notre Dame as part of that picture, as part of that affiliation.
For sure.
Stanford is super happy where they are and what's going on. So it's funny how one TV deal made such a difference where we could have had Notre Dame and Stanford in the Big Ten, which would have been phenomenal, great matchups and all that stuff. But the deal gets done, and now everyone's happy in the ACC. The last thing I want to say that my contact told me was the Big Ten is still, they're adamant they want to wait until 2030, 2031 to the next round of TV deals.
Okay.
Because at that point, their TV deal will be renewing, and Notre Dame will be up for renewal again.
Okay.
So we're going to be right at that period. And that basically, unless their hand is forced, now if Notre Dame fell in their lap, they were going to move.
Sure.
Unless their hand is forced, their targets that they're looking for, they don't want to bring them in like a Florida State until the next round of TV deals are done and new money is brought in.
Sure.
And that's continued to be the theme. And we talked about that when FSU was getting out. Penn State, there's a lot of programs that especially on the eastern side of the Big Ten, that would love to get a school in Florida.
Yep.
Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, they would love to get down into Florida, and they love the idea of Florida State coming in, but nobody in the conference is really pushing to get that done until 2030, 2031.
Makes sense. Well, you've said a whole bunch there.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I want to say is Notre Dame brings the eyeballs, period. You look at, their viewer stats and whatnot, they bring the eyeballs. So, of course, the ACC right now is very, very, very happy to have Notre Dame being, an affiliate member or whatever you want to call it for football, scheduling agreement member, and then obviously they do the other Olympic sports and stuff. They bring the eyeballs. I mean, national brand, massive national brand. But what's interesting to me, Steve, is what you said that, Stanford was actually, if Notre Dame was to join, Stanford maybe was very close to joining the Big Ten here, more than anybody else has really talked about. And again, I want to go back to that USC-UCLA deal where, the Big Ten wanted USC and they kind of said, yeah, you want to bring your buddy along there, UCLA, bring him along. We want you. Kind of a similar deal. Like with them, they're like, hey, we want you, Notre Dame. If you want to bring your buddy Stanford along, we'll take him because we want you. I mean, is that kind of how Stanford could have possibly ended up in the Big Ten here?
Absolutely. And that was from what I understand, that was a drop dead stipulation from Notre Dame. Like, if you want us, you're taking Stanford. No question about it. And the Big Ten said, okay, we would do that. Now, one thing that I think is interesting, and we have Pac fans, we have a lot of people that follow the show.
Sure.
You notice I didn't mention, what school did I not mention there?
I don't know.
Cal.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. A specific one that might jump out to
Cal, sure, because
Cal.
they have been kind of tied with Stanford with the whole ACC deal. Yes.
And that's the thing, is everybody thinks that Cal and Stanford, they can call them Calford.
Yes, right.
Are like so connected, they're connected to the hip. Well, in this case, it sounds to me like they're really not. It's Notre Dame and Stanford.
Okay.
And Cal is more of they're like the third wheel tag along.
Right,
like,
for sure. Yeah.
We talk
Sounds
about,
like it.
Yeah. We talked about UCLA being the tag along with USC. Well, Cal is like the third wheel that no one's really looking at, or they're in the far background. So and I don't want to take shots at Cal. They're a great public school and whatever, but we've always had questions, would Stanford and Cal come back to the Pac? They're not leaving as long as Notre Dame is in the ACC. They're just going to stay there. They're going to be happy with that. They're going to eat the travel costs, whatever.
Yep.
But I could see a scenario where Notre Dame and Stanford come to the Big Ten, and then Cal would really have to evaluate, why are we in the ACC anymore?
Right. Yep.
There's no more Notre Dame. There's no more Stanford, our brother up the road.
Right.
That might be a scenario where they might be playing musical chairs, and they're the last one without a chair. So that's worth looking at, and just kind of thinking about, bearing in mind.
Well, another thing you said, and you've said this a lot, everybody wants to talk about 2027 being the next big thing because people want to get ahead of the end of the contracts. And, you've been very clear, at least with what you're hearing from your couple sources, that still 2030 is where they're at. Like, maybe it'll happen a year ahead, but not 2, 3, 4 years, well, not four is next year, but,
Yeah.
3 years ahead of that 2030, 2031. Things can change. Certain schools, as you said, Notre Dame can change that, but it's going to be very specific schools that could change that timeline. And outside of that, again, they're still kind of looking at the 2030, and it's been a little bit since we've done a realignment talk, and that still just seems like it hasn't changed. They're still sticking with that. They're happy with where we're at. Let's let things settle. I mean, we see the trickle down effects that are still going through. The Mountain West in the Pac right now, and then the subsidiaries of that, the UAC that we talk about, the WAC. All that kind of stuff. That's still going on right now. So, they're kind of sitting steady.
And I think, honestly, those teams. So I originally said when FSU fans thought that they could be playing in the Big Ten in 2026, 2025, 2026, I said they were crazy.
Yeah.
And I said something that was more realistic was like a 27, 28.
Right.
Because they were chomping at the bit to get out. And if they won their lawsuits, it would have been just a clean, free and clear exit possibly.
Right.
But now I think the interests and the timelines of the decision makers at Florida State and the decision makers at the Big Ten are starting to come back into alignment much more. And I think that's really because the agreement that they made with the ACC is incredibly favorable to them.
Yes.
They get extra money.
Yep.
If they can just stick around till 2030, 2031, the buyout, exit fees, whatever you want to call it, drop tremendously. They still have a fantastic path in the ACC to make it, now they're getting the extra money, to make it into a CFP spot.
Yep.
So I think that's the one thing that did change is I think the FSU Clemson timeline is now more realigned with the Big Ten timeline.
They created themselves a bridge. We've talked about that before. This settlement for them, the ACC schools, whoever you want to put into that bucket, we know FSU and Clemson were out in front of that. We've also talked about UNC quite a bit, who was behind the scenes, really doing the same thing, just not litigating it. Yeah. This has created a bridge for these schools to get to the 2030 in that realm. And I also kind of think that we still have, that's 3, 4, 5 years away with the new governance model that we have, with TV markets changing. And, it's not a good time right now to be in the market. We followed that a little bit. Do things settle down a little bit in 5 years? To me, it's not a given that 5 schools are leaving the ACC. It could happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's not a given that it's going to happen. A lot can happen between now and then, and a lot has changed since we've talked about realignment, hot and heavy. New governance, the House. We're looking for some sort of guidance from the legislature here in terms of if they're able to pass something with the SCORE Act and whatever the heck the new one is. So there's so much that has changed so quickly, and I think a lot of these decision makers and conference leaders just they need some
time to see
they need some fresh air. They need to see what this new landscape is. There's been a lot of risk. We're starting to get kind of some answers to some of that right now. Whether that continues or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But I just feel like a lot of these decision makers, unless you're like the Memphis, who wants to get the heck out of the American ASAP because they don't have a bridge right now like FSU has, I think they just want some time.
Yes, I agree. And I do think this shows us, now we're still waiting to see what's going to come out of the legislature, potential SCORE Act, potential governance changes that creates a new entity or something. But for now, until that goes forward, I think we have a very clear indicator of who the 5 powers are. You have the SEC plus ESPN.
Yep.
You have the Big Ten.
That's one and the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have Fox and the Big Ten. And whether you like it or not, and everybody knows I've not been a fan of Notre Dame over the years.
Sure.
Doesn't mean I don't respect them.
Right.
They were just a rival to my favorite team.
Right.
But you have to respect Notre Dame. And the fans that are like, oh, just make Notre Dame do what you want. It's not happening because they are the 5th power.
They are.
If they were to go to the SEC, that would be a huge power shift.
Yep.
If they go to the Big Ten, it's a huge power shift.
Yep.
If they stay with the ACC, get everything they want, it's just maintaining the massive amount of power that they have.
Right.
And I think fans need to come to grips with that. There's no making Notre Dame do something. It's what do they want to do, because everybody else wants them.
Sure.
Still.
Right. And if I'm NBC, I don't know why I would give that up. I talked about the viewership. They drive the viewers. I watched the Notre Dame game a couple weeks ago. I was talking to you about it was the Boise game.
Yes.
And I went, holy cow, how do people watch this? Well, if
Yes.
you're a Notre Dame fan, you love it because they're loving on Notre Dame and
gosh.
everything about it. I'm sitting there going, holy cow, this is so one-sided commentary. It's disgusting. But that's what draws the eyeballs. They're pulling the Notre Dame viewers.
Yes.
So I think that's hard to kind of get away from if you're NBC. They've got a pretty nice cash cow right there.
And they're the only team that gets the only college football team that gets the treatment that, and we discussed this, like NHL or MLB, they have their local,
right?
The
local yokels that you expect them to be super biased, some a lot more than others. But yeah, that's just what you get. They're regional.
Yes. And Notre Dame is the only team that I can think of that gets that, but they're a national team.
Level. Yes.
It's crazy.
It is. It was interesting. I don't watch a lot of Notre Dame football, but I watched that game, and it was very apparent.
Yes, very apparent. So I do want to say one last thing.
Yeah.
Again, just go back to talking about Immaculate. Good friend of the show.
Yeah.
He's you need to be following him if you're looking at governance changes, legislature, expansion, how the business of college football is working. Everyone needs to be following him. And I just want to give him another shout out because he was the one who, I would have never thought to ask some of these questions.
No doubt.
So I'm not going to give away what he was talking about. The reason he got me asking these questions. He might talk about that more on Twitter. So you should follow him on Twitter and X if you're interested.
Good stuff. We haven't talked realignment too much because there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Yeah. As I said, things are kind of settling down a little bit. You really should be following the governance changes, potential legislation changes. That's really what's happening right now. I know it's not quite as fun to talk about as conference realignment, but we'll keep you guys up to speed. This was really good stuff. Again, shout out to Immaculate, shout out to Steve, going out to some of his contacts and seeing that Notre Dame Stanford to the Big Ten was a lot closer than maybe many people thought.
And just think about, we've seen the 4 West Coast teams come to the Big Ten and really integrate themselves right away.
Yeah.
And imagine on top of that, if we were to get Notre Dame and Stanford, it would be amazing for the conference.
No doubt. Well, hey, thank you guys for watching this episode. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you like our content. As we've talked about before, we do realignment episodes only when there's things to talk about. We don't make stuff up. We're not here for clickbait. We bring you information when we get information. That can be once a week. That can be 3 months from now. We just don't know. It comes when it comes.
And it might be a year old sometimes.
That's right, exactly. So, hey, thank you guys for watching this. We'll see you next time on The Big Mountain.